Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back for episode 132 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on May 25th over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Our topic for tonight's episode is going to be a look at Seraph technology. But first, let's run through a quick introduction of those on the show for tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. Next up, we have our own master of social media, the one and only Green Eye Music Lover. Green, I hope you're doing all right. How has the week treated you so far?
Thank goodness it's Friday. It's been a week. It has definitely been a week. It's been busy. It's been good. It's been busy. It's been exciting. It's also been really tiring, and I feel like I'm saying this every week now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that Beer didn't jump in with the "it's been a week" comment.
I mean, let's be honest, it's been a week unless you happen to be an FWC member, in which case it might have been more like, I don't know, a month and a half, something like that. I mean, it depends on which timeline I'm running on. World lines are all over the place right now, so I think that's absolutely on point. You know? Anyway,
so rounding out the usual team, we have our grizzly bearded cultivator of Spinfoil himself, Beard Grizzly. Beard, how are you doing tonight? You still having problems with the timelines?
You mean from the 30 seconds ago that you asked me? Absolutely.
It's not been that bad.
30 seconds? What? That was like last week that I asked you about, Beard. Come on.
I'm going to say that's 30 seconds to me, a week and a half to you. See how this works? You get it now? You understand? I think you do.
Wait.
That'd be good. What?
Wait, dang it, you two. Stop with the timey-wimey stuff.
And so it's funny, in private conversations, like whenever time comes up with Green and I, it's always funny how off kilter I can get her so quickly. It's just like, does this make sense? Like, does this timeline make sense? Because I'm like sitting here racking my brain thinking about this, and it really makes sense to me. And she's just like, well, let me get my notebook and try to pan this out like Doc Brown, maybe.
Right, which I did. I literally drew it out. And
yes, you did.
It's what's funny is like when Beard explains it like a Picasso piece. Everything's all over the place. So look, me trying to figure it out is like, is
this Picasso like in this blue era or his like cubic era? Like what are we doing here?
I'm thinking more cubism with
cubism.
The faces.
Okay.
That actually sounds kind of accurate. Otherwise, I'm doing great.
Awesome.
I just got done releasing a video here like literally 5 minutes ago, so feels good to get that done. This heat needs to calm down though, so I can actually like produce content, because otherwise I'm sitting up here in my office area and I'm just like, I feel like I'm gonna like fall over and die. You know,
Beard is literally on fire at this point. Like
basically.
He's just practicing for his Warlock cosplay. It'll be fine.
Look, we already talked about this. I don't like Osiris all that much, okay?
Oh, man. Well, last week we asked the community what could the reaction between Seraph technology and the Martian rust iron indicate about the technology's capabilities. And I'm pretty sure we got some pretty good responses, so I'm going to hand it over to Green to talk about that.
I'm going to just kind of go with my favorite response because I want to talk about it a little bit.
That's fair.
And it
That's
was
fair.
from Hypersaint on Twitter, and he said transcendence, which plays into the idea that Scions need Rasputin's help to become mind flayers. Potentially, was the Exo program a way to become more than human? So, kind of leads right directly into our topic nicely too.
Yeah, that's because we also know that the technology was for engrams as well, which kind of revolutionized the concept of, the degrees of what it is to be, and insofar as, what engrams are made of and glimmer in general and all that. So,
I mean, do we think that it literally means to transcend the Seraph technology coming out of it? If we're even going to call it that at this point.
Oh yeah, well, and I mean, and that kind of, I mean, I see where you're going too with the segue, because with the name of the technology and the historical connotations of the word seraph, that is something that transcends humanity, because a seraph, which is a nod to seraphim, which is it's a term for angelic or celestial beings.
A scary angel. With 6 wings.
It's 6 wings, and it's generally a snake. Like, where's Justin when I need him?
Right? I think he skipped on purpose for that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was like, wait, no, we're going to talk about, snake angels. I don't need
snake
this.
Angels.
I don't need snakes in heaven. Get that out of here.
Oh, man. So, but I think the other thing is, so next week, and we'll get into this a little bit in the intro notes here in a second, but next week is going to be actually a step away from Destiny. We're going to be doing our recap of our extra lore conversation, which has been a revisiting of Halo, and I'm kind of looking forward to that one because I was talking to Pins about what we're going to be talking about. I think it should be a good conversation, and in light of that, to kind of give you guys a hint at what we're going to maybe be talking about, I actually...
Oh my god. I'm bracing myself. That's just... I know what's coming.
So the question...
And I know it's my Twitter account that does
I know, that's
so.
right. I was talking to Pins about it. I'm like, she's going to kill me. The question for next week is, in the Halo universe, is Halsey a good person? Is what she does, is it ultimately antagonistic or protagonistic, I guess, is the question. Is she actually a bad guy or a good guy ultimately in the universe of Halo? So, before we burn everything down on that one, be sure to keep an eye out on Green's Twitter or the Focus Fire Twitter, or even in the Discord, to sound off and let us know your thoughts on that one. But I know everyone here is looking forward to diving into the discussion, so let's run through our standard intro notes, and then we will get right into it. In our last episode of Focus Fire Chat, we discussed Guardian Potential. If you ever miss an episode and would like to catch up, please be sure to check out FocusFireChat.com for archives, articles, and links to the other aspects of Focus Fire Chat. If you don't mind, please rate and, if you can, review the show on iTunes, Podbean, or whichever podcasting app you use to enjoy podcasts. Reviews are extremely helpful as they not only let us know what we can do better, but help us stay on the charts, which helps others find our amazing community. To those of you who have already taken the time to leave us a review, thank you. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a cross-community gathering where the intent is to offer a week-long, in-depth view of a particular subject from within the lore of Destiny and other games. This chat begins every Tuesday morning and runs until the following Tuesday, with topics decided by the group via a poll that begins every Friday and ends on the Tuesday morning of the new chat. Every Friday at around 10 p.m. Central, we get together to stream a high-level summary of the previous week's chat for those who were unable to participate.
Please be sure to also give some support to the other podcasts in the Guardian Radio Network, links of which can be found in our show notes or on our website. If you're a fan of lore in all its various forms, be sure to also check out thelorenetwork.com, where you can find a wide variety of some amazing content covering a number of different titles and mediums. Our next chat is going to be a discussion on Halo. As always, please be sure to weigh in on the poll this weekend to let us know which topic you want to discuss after that. Links to that poll can be found on either Twitter @FocusFireChat or within our Discord server. With all this being said, here's Green with a high-level summary of tonight's topic.
What sustains life through the darkest days is warm, even in the bitter cold between stars, while those you touch are chilled to the bone. Yikes! Its wailing is the song of your triumph. You rejoice. Your enemies lament. You had no mercy. Make the blood run cold and light the way through the avalanche or blizzard with Seraph Technology developed at Clovis Bray's Martian facility, where all your needs, be it defense against the cold or the dark, are blown away with the speed of divine intervention. Our smart tech can understand, yes, you heard me, understand you better than your own loved ones. So head on down to your local store and ask for the Seraph stamp of approval.
Before we jump into the information and thoughts that the community had about Seraph Technology, however, let's have a quick chat about this week's Lost Lore.
You know, I did really good up until that ending. Funny thing was that I was sitting here and I was like, I'll just unmute a while, and then that happened, and I'm like, don't giggle, don't giggle, don't giggle, don't giggle, don't do it.
Oh, I had so much fun putting that one together.
I just love the last part. The seal of approval.
Well, it's power.
Oh yeah, no, I know, but it's
freaking Terry Crews.
It's
doing
the
the line. It's wonderful.
Oh my
anyway.
gosh, the Old Spice. Oh my gosh, you sent that to me, and I loved it. I might have made a sound clip from that.
You have to warn me when you send in ones like that next time, okay? Jeez.
I warned the Discord, FFC Discord server.
Oh my god.
Oh man. All right. Well, for Lost Lore this week, I think we actually are kind of. Were we still debating on which one we're gonna do?
No, I think do the one that you were talking about.
Okay, do the actual historical,
legitimate,
mythological, religious significance of the Seraphim. Okay, so real quick, let me pull these notes up because there's quite a bit on Seraphim, which, you know, once we get into it, it probably will make a little bit more sense. So the word Seraphim is you can kind of debate on the actual nature of it, but it's pretty strongly believed to have originated from the Hebrew term seraphim, I think is how you pronounce it. Which is the plural. Singular is seraph, which is S-A-R-A-P-H, not S-E-R-A-P-H, I think is how we have it spelled in Destiny. But it was evolved in late Latin and Greek into the more commonly identified term seraphim, which again is plural. The singular kind of stayed the same with a slightly different spelling. And translated, it's often understood to mean what, quote, the burning one, end quote. And it's seen predominantly in the Christian faith, especially in the book of Isaiah, which would be actually chapter 6, verses 1 through 8, to be descriptions of celestial beings who have 6 wings, who are basically described as who are the caretakers of the throne of God and are responsible for singing a triple innovation of holiness, which is also known as the Trisagion. They do actually also appear outside of Christian works in some more of not outside of Christian works, but in different translations, especially in Hellenistic works, which is considered the Book of Enoch and the Book of Revelation. The other thing about it is there is a particular philosopher I don't even want to really call him an apologist because he's more of a philosopher, Thomas Aquinas, who you might be familiar with this name. That's a pretty common name. Most people know who this individual is. He wrote a very large book called the Summa Theologia, and in this he actually kind of went into a school of study that is called angelology, which is very similar to the other side, demonology, but it's obviously the study of angels. And he goes on and he says that the seraph is contains an active force, which is heat, which is not found in fire simply, but exists with a certain sharpness, as being most penetrating action and reaching even to the smallest things, as it were, with superabundant fervor, whereby it is signified the action of these angels exercise powerfully upon those who are subject to them, rousing them to a like fervor and cleansing them wholly by their heat. We consider in fire the quality of clarity or brightness, which signifies that these angels have in themselves an inextinguishable light, and that they also perfectly enlighten others. Which I was kind of reading, and that really does sound. Prior to Destiny 2, the solar class for a warlock was a Sunsinger, and they had an ability that was Radiance, and one of the buffs was Song of Fire, which was basically, it was originally meant to be a group buff, and it didn't quite pan out as well as I think they were hoping, which is where we kind of see more of the Dawnblade kind of get introduced. But this was really very similar to the concept of the Song of Fire. The Seraph were described by Aquinas as being these angelic beings that brought this holy flame, basically, and purified and clarified and encouraged charity. And you see this also as in Jewish traditions, where there is what's called a tenfold hierarchy. But regardless, whether it's Jewish or Christian, the Seraphs are always positioned in the highest, what's called the highest sphere, which is usually within the choir of angels, which is it's a terminology for the different rankings of angel types. It's the top three. You have Seraphim as the first, cherubim, and then another group called the thrones. And the Seraphim are always kind of been presented as the most powerful angels. Now, on the flip side, Seraphs actually do exist in Egyptian culture. And they are not angels. They are actually mischievous and deceitful entities. Again, supernatural entities. But the personification or the presentation of Seraphs within the Egyptian mythology or religion actually can arguably be where we get the presentation of the serpentine figures of the Seraphim with their 6 wings in the Christian text, because that was kind of the deceitfulness and the mischievousness that you see in the Egyptian mythology. It was because they were associated with the serpent and the stealth and all that. So we actually see a kind of a bleeding through, which is very common for early Christianity, and the assumption, I guess you would call it, or the assimilation of different beliefs as that faith, expanded. Which is a very interesting topic, but I'm going to try not to get into that one. It's a never-ending topic. But anyways, so the Christian angelology kind of stems from that concept, that physical presentation. The one last thing that I do want to kind of mention, well, one of the last things, there's 2. One last thing that I do want to mention is that Seraphim, like I had mentioned, were very closely associated with flames and purity. The reason being is that if in most mythological texts or religious texts, or in any supernatural tales, you'll always see fire as being closely linked with purity. And the reason being is that fire burns away all things. It's kind of a reset. If you ever want to see this in action, just go look at a natural forest fire. It's extremely destructive. It's usually very brutal, very devastation. It's just complete devastation. But at the end of it, it actually is beneficial to nature, because what it does is it actually revitalizes the soil. We also see that a lot with agrarian cultures or farming cultures. They will routinely burn the fields, and that's not to be destructive, but it actually forces nutrients back into the soil. One of the common things right now in today's world even is, if you ever see a cornfield, corn usually takes about 5 to 7 years for that soil to recover, because of the way that the plants grow and they suck out the nutrients of that soil. One of the ways that we have discovered, just through basically trial and error, and it's just one of those things, but one of the ways that we actually can kind of speed that recovery process up is actually at the end of the harvest. A lot of times what you'll do is you'll do a burn, which is when you literally light your field on fire, and it's a controlled burn, and they burn everything down to the ground. And then what happens is all that nutrients has now been kind of reduced into the very, very base compound of the ash, and it gets mixed back into the soil. It goes that nutrients back into it. So fire and purity have always kind of been linked. But one of the things that the Seraphs were also responsible for, and you see this in the book of Isaiah, is that they actually they gave the prophet in the book the ability to actually speak what's called the word of God. And the way that they did this was there was a brazier of coals at the throne, and you weren't allowed, like in this particular time, in this particular historical context, the understanding was that if you weren't pure, you weren't allowed to speak to a person of a higher rank. And obviously, in the presence of a divine being such as the single powerful God, you're not going to be pure enough to speak. And so what they did was one of the Seraphim actually took a coal from this brazier and actually pressed it against the lips of the prophet. And that, therefore, in the historical context, again, of that text, that kind of explains where he is now capable of speaking the word of a powerful being that is much more pure and much more holier than his, station as a mortal. Which actually, in hindsight, now that I'm thinking about that out loud, just a real quick tangent, that's not actually unique to Christianity. You see that actually in quite a few different prophetic traditions, I guess. Right. You have like the Oracle of Delphi, which, and you always see a give and take, right? There's always a give and take with the ability to prophesize. The Oracle of Delphi was absolutely bonkers, but they could see into the future. Actually, most of the oracles in Greek mythology were absolutely insane, but that's because they stared into the void of time space, kind of like Doctor Who. But anyways, the last thing that I do want to mention real quick is actually a lot of times you see the presentation, going kind of back to the Christian thing real quick, you see the presentation of Lucifer, who is also the Satan or the devil. He's often described as, quote, an archangel. Well, that's actually not accurate, because in angelology, an archangel is actually a entity that exists within the third sphere. It's one of the lower classes of angels. And Aquinas actually discusses this and actually describes him as a fallen cherubim, which is the second class of the first sphere. There is only, I want to say off the top of my head, I think there's only 6 seraphim that are actually quote unquote documented in any of the texts, and it's actually believed that it was because they were such powerful figures that they did not, from a mythological religious standpoint, they did not involve themselves with the lower realms. They were so busy ruling the first sphere and protecting their domain that they did not slum it with the others. So that kind of is the interesting thing about the word seraphim. And then when we bring that back into the concept of Destiny and Destiny 2, you have direct weaponry such as the Valkyrie. I would argue also pretty much any of the Achilleos weapons. But this kind of was what I think Green was kind of going for with the segue that the question and the answer to the question this week kind of gave, is that transcendence. When you call something a seraph, you're denoting that it is more than a mortal thing. It is more than that. It's the equivalent of a celestial being. So, but I don't know, Green or Beard, is that kind of where you guys were seeing the segue there?
No, yeah, I could easily see it that way. Like it's excelling to a different level, if you will, of the technology that we've had previously. Especially if you look at like what the Seraphs were attempting to do, if they were indeed Seraphs at that point, was it something that they were attempting to just figure different lines for what Clovis was building, or was it something else? If we kind of line it back towards like the idea of Seraph Tech, even then we were familiar with the concept of, and it's only a concept, mind, the 7 Seraphs, but we don't know if they are actually a thing or not. All we know is that they are effectively they are there as a concept to simply give us a structure, perhaps, of how the Braytech guys were putting the Seraphs together, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think that kind of goes back real quick, too. I mean, because we don't, to be clear, we don't have anything right that is like, these are the Seraphs. We don't really have anything in the lore that is explaining that, but we do have, there was a throwaway line from a ride-along back in Destiny 1. It was like one of the first ride-alongs that they did, too, of the Cosmodrome. And one of the devs made a comment about the Seraphs were the programmers of the Warmind. And I mean, that's the only thing that I can, I mean, like, we know, like, again, go for it, Green, go for it.
I mean, there was a mention before Destiny 1 dropped about the factions, and Seraphs were also the 7, I think it was 7 Seraphs back then, too.
Because that's where the logo comes from.
Possible faction. Yeah. It was a possible faction that they did. And we do still have, like, armor sets that were supposedly from that faction that are still in game, but they're just not faction oriented anymore.
Right. I gotta say, if it's a situation like Dido, where Dido's name carried through the Golden Age, then they very well may be a situation where they did not carry to the through the Golden Age. So I don't know if there's anything to be looked at or served that way, or if that helps to make any more sense of it, but that's where I kind of see it.
Also, interesting thing, if we're going to talk about Seraphs and weapons, we don't get any Seraph weapons until D2.
Right.
Everything that was Seraph related was armor pieces.
Well, but we had Sleeper. With
the acceptance of Sleeper, that would be the only one otherwise. But even then, is Sleeper's technology or is Sleeper's look based off of Seraph technology, or is it vice versa? That's the one thing that we don't necessarily know too much about either.
Right. Are we? I mean, the Sleeper, I would say, is like the Achilleos.
Yeah.
Achilleos, however we're saying it.
Achilleos, yeah.
It's part of that tech, which you can argue that part of that type of tech is also part of the Seraph tech. But in my mind, if we're looking at the Seraph relic iron, and I have actually is called, I just don't have it in my head right now. But
Seraphite.
So if you're looking at that, it has that buzzing energy that you see around the different cores of Rasputin, or not cores, but different ports of Rasputin where he makes the weapon for you during the story missions.
I love that effect, by the way.
I do too.
I think that's such a cool one.
So the Seraph weapons, like, in my mind, and this is just headcanon, this is not anything like tied down with any sort of legitimacy. It's the weapons like the Valkyrie. Mm-hmm. Valkyrie is a Seraph weapon. I don't know if I would categorize any of the Achilleos weapons as Seraph weapons, even though they're technically still made by Rasputin.
Well, and I mean, I guess my counterpoint, I think Black Flag mentions this also. I believe that effect is on the new Sleeper.
Is it? I haven't gotten it yet.
I haven't gotten it either. But Black Flag is saying that the Sleeper does have that effect in game as well.
Okay.
Cool. Which I can see as being like a synergy, because if I'm going off the top of my head here, but that is a throwback to the Dvalin project, correct? Right, because that's where we did the connection for the fusion.
We had to get all the different Dvalin pieces to get the Sleeper. Which
that has a whole different rabbit hole that we can go down, if we want to. The Dvalin Forge and, the connection to Norse mythology with that. But it's interesting because I love that the almost crossover between what is the Sleeper, but or sorry, not the Sleeper, but the Seraph technology. I mean, are we going to say that anything within the Hesperus vault is a potential I keep saying Sleeper, the potential for being Seraph technology? I mean, so I guess that's kind of my question is, when we say Seraph technology, what are we thinking we include
part of the issue that I think we have is who were the Seraphs, because at this point we don't necessarily know if they're referring to, especially if we're going to think about the Hephaestus Index as being the means for us to get a hold of these weapons or to have Seraph Tech. The Hephaestus Index is largely related to what we know so far, as being related to gear that Rasputin had built.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, are the Seraphs the Warminds? And that's where they're getting this idea. Or not necessarily the Warminds before I get yelled at, but Rasputin and his subminds. That's where I think we need to see a little bit more of these ideas of like who the Seraphs were, what they were in a way, or is it simply just a name? Because if it is just a name, then the still idea of the Hephaestus Index would still kind of pull through and would still make sense as being something that Rasputin and his subminds were able to kind of culminate and think of. But that's part of the puzzle that I think we don't have yet, is like figuring who is responsible for creating this. Is it along the lines of like what Anna and Elsie were doing with their own hands and putting weapons together? Or were those weapons also routed into the Hephaestus Index? With what we're seeing with Polaris Lance in Warmind, I would say not, because that seems like a weapon that is indicative only of Anna and only of her thoughts and her work. So this is where we're getting this split, at least in terms of like weapons development with Clovis Bray. And I don't think it's answering the question anymore. It's kind of it's giving us more of a broad spectrum, and it's giving us more of a finite idea on what we can kind of deal with along with the Seraphs. But it's not answering the question wholly, which I kind of like. It still leaves up that notion that they aren't filling in that gap all the way when they easily could. They could just come out and say that yes, the Seraphs were the subminds and the Warmind of Rasputin, or they were a culmination or a group that put stuff together. I'm not sure where I would want to put that yet either. That's part of my thing.
Green, what do you got?
I think we actually have it's not like spelled out. I do think we have a pretty decent idea of what the Seraph weapons are, because I think the Hephaestus Index the Seraph weapons are within the Hephaestus Index, but it's not the entirety of it. The Hephaestus Index is so much broader than that. The Seraph weapons are weapons developed by the Warmind, by Rasputin. And the reason why I say we actually have more of like a concrete idea of that is from the Ghost Scan in Aurora's Reach. The Fry file, if you please, since that's what I kind of dubbed it. But it literally calls them out by name. The four different weapons
that we know of from the index.
Right.
Oh yeah, like Aurora knives.
Which oh my gosh, I want to know what Hades' flame is.
Yeah, and that's the only one we haven't seen. We've literally in game seen all the other three.
Am I the only one who reads that and immediately cannot help but think Greek fire?
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you.
I'm like, do we get
Are they can it just be dragon's breath but not dragon's breath?
That's fine with me. Oh my gosh.
But I mean, we had the Valkyrie. We use that in game all the time. Sleeper simulant. We can get that and use that. That's the one that's referenced on about being able to use in-hand munitions. And then we've seen Aurora's knives during the mission where you're going to retrieve the shard in the EDZ.
Mm-hmm.
It strikes to clear off the shard because the shard has all the taken goop on it. And the Aurora knife cuts that off.
Well, and see, chat is saying that they think that might be Hades' flames.
It could be. It's one of the two. It's definitely one of the two. The only reason I say it's Aurora Knives is because of the D1 card where the hunter sees...
Oh, where Rasputin's testing his muscles.
Uh-huh.
I love that card.
Could see that.
That's the only reason I would point closer to Aurora, because we've had more mentions of it. Have we had any other mentions of Hades' Flame before Warmind?
No,
absolutely. Yeah, that's where my fascination with it kind of comes from. Is Aurora Knives we had way back from almost from I want to say vanilla with
almost
with the just went blank. Was it vanilla that pinned the Traveler? He pinned him with the knives.
Dark Below, I think, is when we get most of the Rasputin stuff. Okay. Because Rasputin...
It was pretty...
The Darkness card was in vanilla, but the Rasputin cards
that's right,
didn't actually show up till Dark Below.
Right, okay, fair, okay, yeah. So, I mean, we've had, it was a throwaway, it was a throwaway line that, and I mean, a couple people latched onto it, what are these? But it was mostly it was something with Rasputin, and Rasputin really, at that point, I mean, he was present, but he wasn't super, he wasn't nearly the character that he is in today's Destiny universe.
Right.
But yeah, no, the Hades Flame, though, is the only one out of the list that we have not seen, or, well, that we have not had called out, I guess, would be a clear...
And if we have, that's awesome. If that's what actually takes out the taking goop on the shard, we have theoretically at least either read or have physically seen all of them, which would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I was thinking, I kind of was thinking what the chat was thinking is because, the concept of a Greek fire or Hades or flame anyway, anything is to burn away impurities, and that's kind of what it does. It burns away the taken goopiness.
Totally could be.
And I mean, and I think the other thing too is this ties into what the overall Warmind project and why this is kind of interlaced very carefully or very closely with conversations about Rasputin and Clovis Bray is that we need to remember. And I know this is in the show notes, which is why I'm bringing it up, is that the goal of the overall Warmind project as a whole was to prepare for defenses, not just for, current threats in the Golden Age, which that's a whole nother tangent that I don't want to go down, but also for unseen threats. I mean, they designed it, or there was another Fry file that mentions that Rasputin had surpassed his creator's capabilities of understanding his moral imperatives. And so they mention Asimov's law of robotics. There is kind of a subtle nod to a trolley problem in it wasn't the Machine Child. It was one of the entries from Anna's perspective from during the Golden Age. The Vestian pleasure cruise, as I think it was.
Oh God, that problem.
It was so fun. I love that. But that, I mean, that's the Destiny equivalent of a trolley problem.
Right. It is. To sum it up, they give him the problem, and it's between. What is it? It's between taking a pleasure cruise and what's the other?
It was basically brushing. He had to save either I can't remember if it was a colony, but it was basically a decision of either the people were going to immediately die, or he had to disable a pleasure craft, but like it wouldn't kill them necessarily. Like there was
them, but they would
there was time.
Basically just space out. Like they wouldn't be saved.
There was, but wasn't there like a reasonable? I thought there was a kind of a situation, kind of like there was. Okay,
there was like neither of them were winning situations.
Okay,
so
okay. Well, I mean, which to
way.
be fair, for those who are not familiar with the trolley problem, it's a psychological test basically that you're basically presented with this situation in which you are on a trolley, which is a train on tracks, and you have the ability to change which set of tracks you're on. You can either go right or left. And if you go, and it runs a gamut. Like there's millions of different instances, but a really common one is like if you go left, you're going to hit a woman and her child, but if you go right, you're going to plow into a crowd of 50 people, and like you have to choose which way to go. Like you can't, you have to choose one or the other. That's the trolley problem. It's a lose-lose situation, but it's like, it's arguing, is there a gradient of loss basically there? So there's actually a gun I'm pretty sure it was in Destiny, but I think it's in Destiny 2 as well, called
it's in
trolley.
D1. It is.
Is it in D1, the trolley problem?
It is.
I just love that nod that they had to that one. But I do, well, speaking of guns from Destiny 1, there's a few bits of information about Seraph, or kind of nods to Seraph in Destiny 1. Do we want to talk about, oh my gosh, my favorite armor set ever? The Seraph armor.
Which one?
The Seraph armor.
Oh, the Warlock armor?
Yeah, the Warlock armor. It's got so... I have a pet theory that's actually Teemer's armor, to be honest. So the Seraph armor is a rare, I want to say. It's not a legendary.
It's rare.
Is it rare? Oh, it's one of the blues. It's one of the lost lores of Destiny 1 that everyone just kind of deleted.
That he pines over.
Yeah. Well, it's such a fun read though. Basically what it is it's a suit of Warlock armor. And as you read through it, and I don't have it actually pulled up, which is really depressing. Okay, cool. But as you read through it, it's basically the individual questioning what it was, what a guardian was before. So Green, do you want to read those real quick?
So quite a few of the pieces repeat the text. So I'm just going to read one of them from each of the different quotes. The Seraph 2s, wherever we were, do you think it sometimes wants us back? Another Seraph 2. What do you think happened to us before Ghost woke us up? Maybe we were someplace good, and then the Ghost took us away. I'm not talking about our lives. I'm talking about what happened between the first one and the new one. And that's, I believe, all of them. I didn't have the last one pulled up.
I think that's accurate.
1, 2, 3. That's 5 of them, so it should be all
perfect.
of it.
The cool thing with the Seraph armor, sorry, I was rummaging through my notes real quick. The cool thing with the Seraph armor is that it actually ties into what would be one of the first instances of ghost scans, which is the ghost scan of pod 10201. And there is a precedent set here that, and I'm going to kind of go on a small tangent just real quick. There is a precedent set here that establishes the possibility that we are resurrected from the afterlife, which is basically what he's talking about here, is that there is a contract being forged between the ghost and the individual being brought back as a guardian. You also saw this with the pod 10201, in which our ghost actually tried to resurrect. And there's a lot of different pet theories on who this is. Some people say it's an Easter egg for Master Chief. Some people say, one of the really big theories up until I guess D2 was that it was actually Saint 14. But there's a lot of different theories there, which obviously it's not. But so a lot of people kind of view it as a Master Chief throwaway. But one of the comments that Ghost makes is that he tried to resurrect this individual, and this individual actually turned him down. He said, no, I don't want to come back. I've seen enough war to last me enough wars to last me 1,000 lifetimes or 10,000 lifetimes. And so there is this idea that there is a degree of sentience, a degree of self outside of our current life, which is a very interesting thing for this situation, because what that means is that there is kind of a degree of a soul or a spirit that is being involved here, which I can go on for days about the ramifications of that. But, it's, and you see this again with the Seraph armor, is this idea that you have something that is not quite your body, and it's not quite, is it a soul? Is it a spirit? Like, what is it? And the ghost actually make a deal with that particular thing and then bring it back into the Guardians. And that's where you see the division between a Guardians, what's called the first, or, you'll see this often in the text, you'll see it referenced as the second death, which is when a Guardian actually falls for the final time. Their first death is when they died in their first life prior to becoming a Guardian, and then they were brought back as a Guardian. And it's pretty clearly assumed. I don't think we've seen anywhere except for Shin Malphur, which is still, he's even up in the air, where you can argue that a Guardian remembers their first life. Like, there's no, even with Anna, they presented that as she has no idea, which, by the way, I love how they explained how she knows her name. I love that. Her photo ID badge, the photo ID badge. I was like, that answers a lot of questions as well. But yeah, so the Seraph armor is really one of my favorite pieces from Destiny 1. And like I said, I personally kind of have a theory that Lord Teemer is connected in some way, if not that is his armor set. That I think he's connected in some way, because you see with Teemer a borderline unhealthy fascination, especially with Clovis Bray, but also with the life before. You see that in his confrontation. I guess I don't even know. I guess it would be a confrontation with Fellwinter, where
he's trying to take him out to the.
Yeah, well, where you see the friendship is magic punch, for Teemer. Oh God, I love Teemer's little, what is that? The medallion? Is that what they were called?
Yep.
I love doing that to ogres. That was one of my favorite things to do. But
I kind of miss that.
Oh my gosh, it was such a fun thing. But yeah, so like you saw that with Teemer, like, and then you also saw this with the Volstock and the orrery in the Iron Temple, where you saw I think it was Colivance had his journals talking about how Teemer had kind of gone off in the deep end about how everything was connected to Clovis Bray, which I think someone here could relate to.
Hey.
I mean, he's not. I mean, I'm not saying he's necessarily wrong. I'm just. So I think, but I mean, then what was? Yeah, no, the silence there. What? I don't remember the energy cores. Were those actually in game, or were those?
They were part of Dark Below. They were released during Dark Below, and I think it was for like one adventure or like one patrol mission, because they really weren't used much. I do remember that. If
were they okay, so they were like something that we picked up as patrol mission, kind of like okay.
It looks actually similar to the little pads where you can get the Valkyrie, but circular.
Oh, okay.
But fun fact, the majority of our information in D1 on Rasputin came during Dark Below because of
Eris.
what's her name?
And Omnigul.
Well, not just Eris, Omnigul. Omnigul trying to get in there.
Multiple times.
Yes.
That lady did not take no for an answer from Rasputin.
And we let her know it multiple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, really.
That may have been the strike I ran the most during D1. Grasp of
man.
Malik.
Oh,
There were
yeah,
also-
that's right.
there was-
That's right, yeah.
There were 3 more sets that were... These are more theoretically Seraph armor sets, because these were the ones I was talking about earlier being related to the Seraph faction before that faction became no more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Lamentation, and I'm going to say this wrong, rhymed. It's rhymed. It's
I think
it's no. Yeah, it's rhymed.
It's rhyme
I
because
looked it up.
it's
I looked it up.
rhyme is what it's talking about.
Yeah, which is frost.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always want to look at it and go rimmed, but it's not rimmed. There's no double M. It's just rhyme.
Oh my!
And then the Scarlight armor sets. We're not to the After Darks portion. By the way, if you are a podcast listener and you ever want to hear us become goofy as all get out, come to the live recording. And after we stop recording the podcast, it becomes very fun and very eye-opening for everyone.
And if Beard and Blue stay on for more than an hour, it gets really loopy.
Yeah, especially when we're super freaking tired.
Mm-hmm. But these 3 armor sets were actually the majority of my summary. Most of the information came from it, and what I thought was interesting is the rhymed set in particular, which is a warlock set.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so leans towards kind of the Clovis Bray sets that we have today.
Right.
Very much so, kind of taking care of yourself in the cold. Scarlight even kind of has that feeling to make their blood run cold with the Scarlight mask, and that's a hunter. And these were legendary sets in D1.
Yes.
These were these Dawning, or were these
Rise of Iron.
Rise of Iron.
Rise
Okay.
of Iron, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, those are some fun reads. They're short. They're not really quotes. They're more just sayings attached to them, but they have some fun little tidbits that make you think, hey, Rise of Iron. Hey, did you know about this ahead of time? Funny how that happens in this game.
Oh, the
Moving
beauty,
on.
the beauty of flavor text.
Oh, yes.
Well, I'm going to say between that and, different interpretations and how we can all read things differently, my
Mhm.
goodness.
Yeah, go back and read any of even some of the vanilla text.
Yeah.
You'll get a new eye-opening experience now that you know so much more.
Right.
Isn't there?
Because-
There's sorry. That opens the door to a tangent that just happened recently.
The thing that happened on Twitter the other day?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That wasn't vanilla though, was it? That was dark.
No.
Glow.
Yes.
Okay.
So, let's move on to Rasputin's weapons.
Let's do it.
Mhm.
So we know of the 4 that we talked about earlier: Valkyrie, Sleeper Simulant, and Hades Flame and Aurora Knives, which the Aurora Reach Ghost Scan, which is the little terminal that you can find in Aurora Reach, talks about it directly. And I kind of almost want to do an episode just on these
Fry
terminals.
files.
Yeah.
Yes. We should
I'll add it to
like,
the poll.
instead of X Files, it'll be the Fry Files. I'll do a Scully. I need a Molder.
What do I look
I'll
like?
do a
Chopped liver?
summer like beard. Do you want to do an X Files?
What are we gonna call them on the poll? Are we gonna call them the Fry Files?
Yes. No one will know what it is unless they listen to the
That's what it's- All right, fine.
Fry
It's on
Files tag the
Fry
terminals.
the Fry
Fry files, aka the terminals. I think we can go for that.
Yeah.
That
I'll
sounds
add that.
good.
I'll add that to the poll.
Yes. There's so much information in these
There
guys.
is.
It's
Oh my
ridiculous.
gosh. And yeah,
It's-
not even about this particular topic. This is like the Fry files, the Exos. The Exos is huge. Like, it is a huge revelation on that.
There's actually a lot of really cool things to look at with those silly. Just that. How long are each of them? Like maybe a minute, 2 minutes?
Yeah. Well, and I just love the way that they're delivered. It's like,
yep.
They do like a little intro and they're like, would you like to know more? And I did the first, when you ran into the first one, I was like, well, that was kind of dumb. And I hit it. I just randomly hit it again. And it was like, oh, that's the little trick. I was like, because the first bit is only like 5 or 10 seconds. And he's like, it's basically a really brief summary. And then he ends with, would you like to know more? And you have to reactivate the item, and then that's when he goes into for Aurora Reach. I'll hand it back to Green for the Aurora Reach one, but the majority of this one you have to activate them twice.
Yes, all of them you have to activate twice.
Right. Sorry. Yes.
So the Aurora Reach one reads as this: Valkyrie, Sleeper Simulant, Hades Flame, Aurora Knives. The weapons of the future are being developed by the Warmind Rasputin today. Would you like to know more? The goal of the Warmind project is to prepare our defenses for unseen threats. We are still learning to interface with Rasputin, but it's already in the process of helping to forge new weapons suited to protecting humanity. Communication with the Warmind has been a logistical concern from the project's inception, but the Hephaestus Index is a promising first step towards cooperation with our new commander and protector, which that's scary to me. This catalog of next-generation weapons ranges from planetary cannons to small and mid-size arms for use by ground infantry. There are currently over 150 projects in varying stages of research and development. By parsing data and performing calculations at a phenomenal rate, Rasputin is able to provide instruction in the form of math, the language of the universe. With Clovis Bray engineers and Rasputin working side by side, we can rest assured that our children will live in a prosperous, safe galaxy. I know that didn't turn out the way they thought it would, but whatever. New commander? When did Rasputin get a promotion, guys?
Well, that was the Bray Tech armor talks about that.
God.
Because
scary.
remember, there's the Braytech armor. It's one of the hunter. Well, I'm assuming it might be all classes, but it's the legs. It might be the legs. I think it's the snow. I can't remember, but it basically, I think it's the snow boots. But it's basically like the two techs are talking, and he's like, "What are we even doing out here?" And he's like, "I don't know." He's like, "Doesn't that bother you?" And he's like, "No, it gives me more time to be with my kids." There was and it was like it's exactly that. It's the hubris might not be the correct term for it, but it kind of is. You see that with a lot of these kind of this just like, oh yeah, well, it's going to take care of us, so we don't have to think about it. And it's a very common trope in science fiction. It's also a very common trope in historical cultures that go right before their fall. Rome being the prime example. I mean,
just Rome?
Yeah, well, I mean, right. I mean, pretty much any major civilization, Rome is the easiest one to point to, though, because this is like a good parallel between what Rome did with the Gauls and with the Vandals and all that, the mercenary armies. They hired out their entire army, and then basically what that translated into is the entire nobility, instead of being a culture of warriors, became a culture of politicians. Well, that was all great and good until their army that they were paying decided that the gold that they were getting paid wasn't enough. They wanted to take it from them, and they're like, "Oops, we don't have a standing army without you." And that, I mean, not to say that that's what happened with Rasputin, because that's still kind of up in the air. We don't really know that. But Rasputin also has the cards in the grimoire where he kind of was like, well, in order for me to survive, you guys are going to have to die. Sorry. And then he kind of he shrugged and the millions turned to ash.
Not everybody.
Well, not everyone. I mean, there was a small select group of people that got trapped on Earth with a submind of his that was slightly insane.
That's the trolley problem.
That's the trolley problem. And honestly, that is the trolley problem. Did you have something else real quick on that one, Green?
I did. So I'm just going to tie this back into the Seraph concept altogether real quick. The idea of the weapons being it's basically otherworldly weapons or futuristic weapons in this case. But also the fact that they're having trouble interfacing with Rasputin, talking to Rasputin, and they have to have some sort of index or a book guide, essentially, to be able to communicate with said somewhat godlike being.
You mean they had to have a grimoire to communicate with?
Yeah, really?
Sorry.
Or a Bible.
Or a Bible, yeah. Yeah.
I'll also accept a grimoire. That's
yes.
Also fair. Bring it back! Bring it back!
Yes.
But I think that also real quick ties into the unsolvable problem entry, because that's where you kind of see the difference of opinions here as well, right? Because with the concierge AI is being presenting math as the universal, the language of the universe, and
which is true.
To a degree it is, but then you see.
True.
Okay, sure. But then you see Anna, who kind of comes at it from the degree of, teaching him language in the sense of like emotional and humor. Humor is the one that she tries. We get the
tries
soap.
Her best.
This what was it? The soap.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's still work in progress. I love that. But like, she's trying to teach him how to communicate, not necessarily from a tactical or a statistician point of view, but like from, I think she says, if you want to insult me, call me a neurolinguist. And then she goes on, she's like, neurolinguistics is about encoding language. I'm a psycholinguistic. I study how language can lead to independent thought. So it's really a difference in opinion as to the root of the issue, right? Because she goes on to say, the computer we call Rasputin is the nexus of Sol System's defense network. They can process data at superluminal speed. It can uplink to the thousands of war sets that keep humanity safe, but we need more from it. We need it to think for itself. And that's where I come in. And
which
so
is interesting, just from the psychological aspect of it, essentially feeding Rasputin literature, art, humanity, feeding him aspects of our own creative process in order to teach it to think in a similar, not necessarily similar fashion, but in a way that we can understand, is absolutely fascinating.
Well, right. and the thing is that is a human response to anything. We, oh gosh, I just went blank. There's an amazing quote, and I'll probably remember it as soon as we get off the podcast. But it's talking about, right? That's how it usually goes. But it's a theologian apologist that is talking about why humanity always seeks to limit the limitless, and it's because we, in our core, we seek to understand. Like we try to understand, and the easiest way for us to understand is to bring stuff down to our level, because we can't
by association.
Yeah, kind of. It's about, but the consequence of doing that, and this is where, Green, you're absolutely correct with the regards to mathematics being the language, the universal language, is because mathematics doesn't reduce the content. It expand mathematics if you look at mathematics as a language, is an expansive language. It will expand to accommodate what you are discussing, right? It's infinitely capable of doing that. Whereas vernacular, or the verbiage, or the diction of the individual speaking, there is a limiting quality. When we put a name to something, we have limited that thing to that name. You see this a lot within mythological or magical, fairy tales, where you learn something's. This is where the idea of something's quote true name comes from, is to bind it. You by putting a definition to something, you are limiting that thing to that definition. Whereas within mathematics, your language by its own nature is actually. It's not binding. It's defining in
it's like
amorphous state,
easy,
I guess.
Sort of. Like an easy example of it is the word love. Take love in English,
right? Versus
versus love in Greek. There's a couple different loves in Greek.
Right.
3.
Yeah, agape is the predominant one that I remember off the top of my head.
There's like brotherly love.
Familial love, which yes. Familial and brotherly, and then friendship, and then romantic is usually I think is the loosest translation there. But there's 3 degrees of it.
In English, we just use the word love to mean all 3. Well, that's how things get lost in translation really easily, because which one are you meaning? When you tell somebody,
or the word sonder.
You,
I love that word.
Yeah. I actually have a tattoo specifically, basically talking about this concept. It's a very simple tattoo on my foot. It says, "What words miss?" And it's just a reminder to say that, hey, what somebody's saying to you may not exactly mean exactly what they're trying to say. Like, you don't interpret what they're trying to say exactly what they're meaning sometimes, because words can be messy.
Difficult.
Yes.
Well, language is hard. I mean, I don't mean that sarcastically. I mean, there is a reason that there are a bajillion different specialties within the field of linguistics. And one of those things, you see that a lot, and kind of tying this back into the Rasputin and the Seraphim thing, that kind of goes back into what we've kind of been talking about. The interesting problem here is that we as humanity, we created something that we no longer could communicate with, because it was by its own nature inherently more than what we were capable of understanding. Which
kind of goes back.
Oh my gosh!
What Halilova was talking about.
Yeah,
like we talked about last time.
But I mean, and so like that is also kind of a mind-boggling concept, is that, your creation has surpassed the creator.
Right.
So which every parent wants to happen.
Why did I just get V'ger flashbacks? Somebody help me.
Which one?
V'ger.
That's not what I heard. I heard Deidre, which is a totally different series.
No, it's as a Star Trek thing. I don't know if you're.
Nope.
I'm sure you'll know that one.
That's not. I'm not a Star Trek person. I'm
She's
sorry.
Not a Trekkie.
That's not what I said. I don't want to offend anybody.
That's what I said.
Do you like Star Wars more than Star Trek? What's wrong with you?
My dad only
I do,
likes
because
Star
it's
Wars.
fantasy.
Never saw any Star Trek. You guys can come at me, bro. So, okay, we've talked about the weapons a little bit. Do we want to talk about kind of what Valkyrie is? Because that's the one we had the most interaction with.
Yeah,
as far as like our idea of what it is.
What we think it is at the moment.
Yeah, really.
So Valkyrie is the weapon that is called in from Rasputin on those little fancy pads that he has all over his inner hull and his like inner sanctum. He's got them all over the place in there, as well as wormsats, which is terrifying. It's like walking into a giant time bomb. But during generally public events and the protocol, why can't I think of the first word? Escalation, thank you. Escalation protocol, they show up, or you can unlock them with a key, essentially, that you get. And essentially what happens is lots of staticky, buzzy things show up, and you pick it up and you form it into a lightning bolt like Zeus. And you throw it at things.
Mm-hmm.
Which is...
Fun tips for it. If you hold it back longer, it launches straighter.
Yes.
I didn't know that until these guys told me that.
Was that you or was that Justin? That
Both of you. Both of them did it. Because Justin was talking about how he couldn't kill frickin' souls.
Oh yeah, because he couldn't hit it.
It was like, I can't aim this thing. And I was just like, don't worry, Justin, I understand entirely.
Where's Green sitting there like, why didn't you hide behind the box?
Right. There's a handy little long box in the middle of the map that's
to be fair,
for hiding.
It's a giant dune worm. I was trying to get on its back to ride, okay?
Guys, boys. See, this is the problem when you have an immortality and you can be rezzed as many times as you want. You do stupid things like that and don't try to finish him.
Oh, man.
But do we want to talk about how it's very Siva-esque?
Yeah, and I also just wanted to kind of go back real quick too, because it is an actual spear. Like it's not just it's not just correct, fair. Because they that was kind of the whole thing with the whole raid secrets guys finding the javelin or the Valkyrie. They found an actual Valkyrie model.
It's cool.
It's amazing. And if you guys are curious about what it looks like, just go over to, I think it's Raid Secrets, but the guy that basically the community decided that had it, he actually has like a shrine of all the Destiny stuff that he has, and it's a really well done display case basically. But the Valkyrie is featured prominently there, and it's a really detailed and very intricate looking piece of tech, and it's very Rasputin-y, I guess is the word for it. I don't really know what you would really call that. It's very prominent, very similar to the Achilleos and the Sleeper Simulant. It's got the it's like is it hexagons? Is that what the word that I'm searching for is? Anyways, but it's got the little squares and the little the imagery of Rasputin basically. But yeah, so, and like, if you pick it up in game, you actually pick it up and it does seem like there are, the best term, it would be the Sevamites. It seems like are swarming around it. Mm-hmm. And then, you have the whole Mjolnir ability where it returns to your hand.
Can I time out real quick and let's explain the Raid Secrets guys, the event?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes.
Maybe not everybody knows about that. In game, in the inner sanctum of Rasputin, right after you go in the door, if you turn left, there is a really interesting pictograph. Well, Raid Secrets guys, the guys who were digging into Vault of Glass for years and years and years, got a hold of it and decoded it, and it led to a real life physical place at Sleeping Beauty Lake. It was off this little hiking trail. And once you got off the hiking trail, you went 200 yards or 200 feet off the hiking trail at these exact coordinates that you got from breaking this puzzle. And at that place was a cache, like a geocache.
It was a geocache from Vicarious Visions. Like, oh yes. My gosh.
And the first person that got there got the Valkyrie, which the guys who videotaped it, there were 3 guys who videotaped their journey out there. They ended up getting their second. The guy who got there beforehand had shown, like, they showed him his Valkyrie and everything, but the guys who got their second, and there's a few more, I'm sure they're probably gone by now with knowing how many people wanted to go grab those, but they had commemorative coins.
Mm-hmm. I think
that they got from it.
I think I want to say that they got some of the ones that got out there, I think got some to send to the other members of Raid Secrets that weren't there. I want to.
That's cool.
Because I know there was a big thing about they got something for everyone who helped work, but which is not unique. It's not a unique event in Destiny's community. Thankfully, it's one of the things I love about this community. But the other trivia fact there is that Sleeping Beauty's name is Aurora.
Yes.
Right.
And Sleeping Beauty is a ballet by Tchaikovsky.
Yes.
It is also the rename for Sleeper Simulant's main perk at this point. from the translation of German.
I was about to say, wasn't it the German translation that it happened
it was. I forget what it is now, Dornchar or something.
Yeah.
It's along those lines.
Super cool, though. That's probably one of my favorite things that has come out of the Warmind expansion.
Well, and on that, it's not over, right?
Right.
There's another code on the Valkyrie that we don't know.
Really?
Yeah. So they got the
actually,
did they figure it out?
They did.
Okay.
What did it? Oh, so it was a cross. There were, I think it was 3 Valkyries or something like that they ended up handing out worldwide, and it was a cross-hash code that actually defined itself. But there were, with the 3 of them, you had to line them up and everything. After you deciphered it, it legitimately, I'm not making this up, it legitimately translated to 2 tokens and a blue.
Oh, right, I remember this. Which is amazing. Such a troll.
So it was the trolliest, international combination I think I've ever heard in my life. But it's amazing. It was wonderful. So many people were really pissed off about it. Meanwhile, I'm sitting back going, "Oh my god, that is hysterical."
It's brilliant. It's brilliant for Bungie to be like...
You literally go to these geocaches, and technically it's a public event, so you gotta get 2 tokens and a blue out of it,
So good. So good.
Because the Bungies didn't have anything on it, right? It was just this. It was just these others. Okay. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
We didn't see anything that was actually on the box or the geocache itself, rather. But yeah.
Oh my god, that just made my week.
It's so good. It's just so good.
So the Siva mites after that little tangent. Oh god. You just have to smile and go bravo.
Yeah,
bravo.
That's one of those things where it's like they saw an opportunity and man did they take it.
I'm so glad they did. If they would have done anything else, I mean, if they would have continued this little scavenger hunt, that would have been cool.
Yeah. That's the best way to
end it with 2 tokens in the blue.
Freaking priceless.
Yes. So good. So, okay. The Valkyrie endgame has the Siva might things around it. Do we have... I didn't see anything that after digging into Warmind a little bit, I did not see anything that would kind of give the flavor of Siva, per se. We had the web lore where Zavala locks up the stuff about Siva, but did we really get anything about Siva itself?
In Warmind?
I haven't
Warmind
seen
itself,
or heard
no.
of anything yet, no.
I mean, other than, the grimoire of... I am always getting the color wrong on this one. Is it Exodus Red? That has
Which
the frame. One? That has the frame with the mites in it.
That one we're not sure if it has or what color it is.
We didn't have a distinct. Okay, but
I continue to say that it's black, but that's supposition.
Oh, right. Okay, that's the okay. But the only thing that to me, we did not get anything specific. No,
no.
It is admittedly a headcanon at this point that Siva is associated with this. But I think was it after show last week that we talked about how Siva would explain quite a bit of this entire where these drop points come from, how they get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did. We were digging into that quite hard, actually. I was surprised how much we wanted to dig into that.
Well, there's also stuff back in D1 that refers to things on Mars, specifically the Titan card, Ghost Fragment Titan, where you meet Holborn, Holborn's host, for the first time, and they're talking to this little ghost that's going by buzzing with a corruption. I don't think, do they use the word corruption in that card? I know it reminded them of the ones that came back from back in the Plague Lands.
Yeah, they're talking about it, but they didn't really they said that it was coming back from Jaggy's host, but we didn't really get confirmation on like where Jaggy was coming back from, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know, did they specifically, I mean, I know, oh yeah, because he said like it reminded him of the 7 ghosts that,
Yeah, there wasn't anything that confirmed like what was happening with them, at least to my knowledge. I haven't...
He's just buzzing.
We haven't seen much about Jaggy or Holborn. We'll put it that way, at least just yet.
Holborn, but the tidbits that we've seen about Holborn, oh my gosh, I want to shake that man's hand. He can put an EMP bomb together in 5 minutes over a radio. Like,
yep. Was gonna say that. I read that card just the other day. I was like, oh my god!
The best part is the pilot
He's the MacGyver.
The pilot still has no idea how he did it. He's like, I don't even know what we did, but it was an EMP. The other thing is like we also see it's not. Is it Obsidian? No. Ghost 404. The card with Ghost 404. Is Ghost Fragment Ghost 2. It was Obsidian, and why can I not remember the other ghost name? But they ran into what we lovingly refer to as Ghost 404. Who was it?
Yeah,
I don't remember if it was on Mars or not. I know.
No, I don't. It wasn't. I don't think it was. It might have been. I can't remember if it was on Mars, but it was like it was a ghost that had been trapped on Mars. Like I know that because it was like, yeah, I got trapped in the, and it was like, oh my god, it's the best, one of the best cards. It's a very long card, but it's very, very entertaining.
Yes.
So I mean, we have
doing
seen
the self-diagnostics.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to run 2 of those.
So that being said, just to point out, was the Ghost Fragment Titan card came out in Dark Below?
No, a Ghost Fragment Titan came out in Vanilla.
Was it vanilla?
Yeah.
So
because that was when we first learned about the Dust Palace. Well, one of the first issues. Yeah.
Something's been on Mars.
Because that was the Dust.
Since
that was the Dust Palace with Charlemagne. That was where a lot of the drama with Charlemagne kind of outside of game. That's where that kind of started. Because that was where you had the Scions trying to crack into the Dust Palace to get a hold of whatever, which, it turns out that it was a submine. Or, well, a portion of Rasputin. But that was where Cade made the comment of like, well, if Rasputin's protecting it, we need to make sure it doesn't fall into the Scions. And this is also where you actually see the first iteration of Scions trying to get at Rasputin. We've seen that from the very start of Destiny.
Right. Can we talk about the adventure where we take out the Scions that are
giant Scion? Oh no! The adventure. No. Yeah, there's
the adventure where the Scions are taking the Rasputin tech that are trying to get a hold of the lands, essentially, in order to go from regular Scion into
Flayers.
The Flayers.
Yeah.
The Ascendant thing. This goes back to the guy who tweeted at us, being able to transcend using the tech. That's really scary. Like, if that tech can help a Scion transcend into a Flayer, which means that somehow they got a hold of that same tech in the Dust Palace, what else can...
I would argue slightly here. The Flayers that we saw in Destiny 1 were actually part of a group called the Ice Reavers, which they were the only 3 that we saw in Destiny 1. However, the Ice Reavers were described, and I believe this was from a Prima guide. You could probably argue maybe that this isn't necessarily 100% canon, though I would argue that it kind of is. But
they made their way out there.
Well, the Ice Reavers are basically were described as basically like specialist assassin protectors. So like they were specialists that were it was kind of presented that they were a group similar to the other detachments. So you had like the what is it? The Dust Giants, the Broken Legion. You know, I'm blanking on all of the different detachments,
Right.
but you had all those different detachments, and each was Skyburners and all those. But each one of those detachments within the Cabal army, each one of those detachments had a special focus. So, like, you know, the Skyburners were their aerial. The Dust Giant, I think it was the Dust Giants, were like the footmen. You know, each one of these things had a very specific mission parameters that they were going for. Skyburners were also kind of the leaders. That was where your Primus for the detachment in the Sol system, which was Primus to Arc, I believe. Wasn't that
that got taken?
Yeah, he was basically the major Primus for the Cabal in our system. He was a Skyburner. And Skyburners were the ones that had the toothbrush on their heads, the mohawk that was very Saint 14-ish. But the Ice Reavers were actually specialists that had been a detachment of Ice Reavers had been assigned to the Skyburners. They were associated as a proxy piece of the Skyburner detachment. And those flayers, the 3 flayers that were one of each element at the time, which was one of the best cloaks that you could get as a hunter.
Yes, they look so good.
Oh, they were so nice. They were like the SRL before we got the SRL
glowy
ones.
cloak.
Oh, it was so nice. But those 3 individuals were flayers from within the Ice Reavers. They were not. They did not. They were basically they were flayers before they got to Mars. So it's something. It's something again that. Oh, go for it.
Well, it's just a very tenuous question. Ice Reaver itself, like a Reaver, I'm thinking back to Firefly being kind of a zombie-esque type character, which leads me to the Hive, which also puts me back into Ice, which leads me back to where we're at in Warmind.
Well, I'll have even a weirder connection for you, because here's a fun little tenuous connection between that and the current Clovis Bray environment. Is we have a reference from Callus to the OXA machine that has an M-Sundaresh 12 or M-Sunda 12 file, and who invented the OA machine? The Scions did. The Freethinker did. And
according to the Callus book.
Right. Well, but I mean, right, and I mean, you could, yeah, that's true. As far as we know, the Scions are responsible for the OA machine or the OXA machine, but we do know that the Scions, especially the Freethinker, was a very, very powerful psionic, which is kind of, it's assumed that's kind of where the name comes from, but it was assumed that they were very powerful psionically, and that's where the OXA machine comes from. Well, you now have a tenuous connection between the OXA machine and Clovis Bray, and now you have Scions trying to run into a Warmind to become Flayers, which is a form of Ascension. So, you know, it starts begging the question, in Beard, I think you'll appreciate this one, it starts begging the question of, again, the Lost in Space connection. Did we actually invent this technology, or did we find it? Right?
He's so happy for that.
Well, I mean, it's a huge again, Lost in Space, the new Lost in Space. It's a huge thing. Like it's a huge component of like explaining kind of what's going on, and it's a very popular scientific trope, or science fiction trope, is humanity finds this alien technology and actually incorporates it into it. I mean, you see it. Pick your science fiction movie, and there's probably going to be an element of it. Independence Day, for God's sakes, you know, that's like the huge thing of Independence Day, and so like it's not too far-fetched, you know, maybe that's where we get these sudden big leaps in Clovis Bray. And, you know, going back again to, you know, Beard and I's conversation about the Hive being underneath this Bray facility. Like, was it there before? Like, is that the reason why the Bray facility is there? You know, it starts begging these questions of exactly where is the origin point of some of these technologies, and if there is a if there is a connection between the OXA machine and the Warminds, that would explain why the Scions are so fascinated and so drawn to Rasputin and the Seraph technology. You know, because if it ties into what they use to become flayers, and you know, we know from what we saw in Destiny, from the assumptions of those connections, and we haven't been told otherwise, they were flayers before they got to the Dust Palace. Well, that kind of implies, okay, well, they don't necessarily need the Warmind component there.
Do you remember the end of that mission, or that strike? I think it was a strike.
The Dust Palace one?
Right. So the flayers, when they're showing up, they're transforming in like a very Goku-esque style.
Yeah, well, because they're like super, super powerful flayers, and you have the one of each element.
Right. So they're powering up in these like Dragon Ball Z style.
Oh yeah. Like they had are you talking about like the points that they had to stand in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that imagery in D1, and that adventure I was talking about, which I cannot for the life of me for the name of it, where we're taking on the flayers again. They're standing on the point of the Valkyrie, and the look is not the same.
But it's pretty similar.
They don't go into that white, like,
right? But they're also not going in for a specific element either. You know,
I never let them live long enough to tell. So
that's fair. That's fair. But I don't see, like, that was a huge part of the Dust Palace strike. Was there was one for Arc, one for Solar, and one for Void. But for this particular adventure, there's only the one point of power. Mm-hmm. So that might be another, because I did not put those two together. But yeah, that's an interesting component there as well. Yeah, but I agree with you. They don't usually even get to touch the God Circle.
Yeah, and they die a lot faster than the first ones,
They
too.
do. They
don't
do.
have to use a sword anymore.
Oh my god. Those flares were the bane of my existence.
Black Flag makes a good point. It was one point that they had to go to, but there are 3 waves of the Scion.
Right. Yeah. I guess now I kind of want to go back and let one of them actually make it.
Yeah.
But
I'm talking about the other adventure that pertains to this a little bit.
Yeah,
where we piss off Zavala.
Oh, again.
The Hephaestus adventure. Well, okay. Besides the fact that Mr. Grumpy Face showed up inside of Rasputin.
Oh God. Yeah, I still have problems with that in Mr. 1984. But anyways, I don't think. See, like, I didn't take him. I mean, like, he's annoyed, but I didn't take him as being like super pissed about us, because he kind of was. He was more annoyed at Anna, because Anna Anna pulled a Cade, which, you know, I kind of understand her perspective.
Her personally responsible. I don't know. I mean, why wouldn't Zavala get mad at us for basically disobeying? Like, we didn't directly disobey him because we destroyed the points that he asked us to destroy.
I just love that. I was like, they're like, we're not telling you not to destroy it. We're just telling you, could you maybe make a copy before you destroy it, please?
Right. And we have to go into what is the terminal area? No, what is that area called?
It's not the Dynamo, but it's
Yeah, it's in that area though.
It's Alton Dynamo, something.
In that area, the dinosaur area.
The dinosaur area, which is exactly what I was just thinking. I was like, now I'm thinking dinosaurs in Jurassic Park.
Where there's all those, are they CPUs? What are they?
No, those are like processing towers. Like, those are
okay.
I don't think I wouldn't call them necessarily CPUs. I mean, they're like server stacks is what I would.
There we go, servers. Which reminds me of the server farm back in Rise of Iron.
And then there's no, I didn't. But there was that one, and then there was also the server farm on Titan.
Oh, right.
that you are in a giant freaking computer, which was really cool.
Right. Anyway, so you have to take those two different pieces, which they have two halves of it, and then you have to combine them on this terminal and fight off a bunch of hive while you're combining them. And then you have another copy, and Anna's happy, and Zavala's kind of miffed.
Like he usually is.
Well, anymore, yeah. Poor guy. Everything that he's held dear is being ripped from his hands, like his precious city and his order, and it's kind of diving into like a little bit of craziness at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Tearing everything down.
That's okay. I like breaking things.
Void Warlock.
What we do.
What do you think, Blue? Is there anything else you want to kind of dive into with the Seraph Tech?
No, I mean, like, I think...
Those were my big notes.
Yeah,
unfortunately, we don't have a lot to go by right now. That should be kind of the big statement. Like,
we have a lot of breadcrumbs, but
yeah. Oh, like I say, we still have plenty of stuff that we can reference. Thankfully, like we have been here this whole time. But yeah, it's breadcrumby. It's very Hansel and Gretel for sure. What did you have, Green? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about one of the creators of those? Do we want to talk about, as far as being the Hephaestus, somebody who is messing with the Hephaestus item nodes? And figured out how to make a lock with those, which now we know what the little targets were put out for.
The data points, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which that's super cool that they made it an actual lore thing rather than just
here it is,
a collectible. Yeah, like I like how they actually made a comment about like the invention of those. Like this wasn't what they were intended for, but was it Elsie that did that?
Elsie, yep.
She was the one that did was like, oh yeah, these would be really cool little like basically geocaches that you can.
Yep.
Yeah, she finds out in Lost Memory Fragment, the 25 days until Divergence, Lost Memory Fragment. She talks about how she could basically reprogram them to be a lock.
Right. Which,
fun thought or fun thing. The sword, what is it, World Line
Zero.
World Line Zero is locked in that first locker. And then we get the Sparrow in the second locker.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you have the 3 days until Divergence where she actually talks about putting it in there like before. She wants to take the weapon I've created, and so she stores the sword in the locker and takes off.
Why she can't take a sword off world is beyond me, but I
don't know. I think she just didn't want her to catch up with her.
Well, you're assuming that her journey was off world.
Well, she said that she couldn't take it off world.
Oh, okay.
It was too
remember
big.
that part.
Yeah,
because the only other thought there was like if that was her transformation too.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to say if there was something else that kind of got tied back to it.
I think it's because I have the reason. I have it in my head. Remember how the node that's not unlocked when you first get it?
Yeah. That
you have to do the protocol that I can never remember the first
escalation protocol.
Escalation. I will never remember escalation.
That's why I'm here to fill in the
unlock it.
Yeah.
She said it wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
The weapon wasn't ready to take off world.
Oh.
Okay.
She says
that makes a bit more sense.
She wants to take the weapon I've created, and at this point, it's impossible to take off world. It's way too dangerous to fall in the wrong hands. I think the reason why is because it wasn't ready to go off world, because it wasn't completely finished, and we're finishing it now.
By taking it out of a locker?
By taking it out of the locker and then
charging it with the escalation protocol.
Okay, that's fair. Which kind of falls back, I guess, on the cores that she was using too with the Vex Tech and everything, which just leads down a completely different rabbit hole of why we need to charge it through using hive hive bodies.
Yeah.
Uh,
A little bit of
Gee.
sword logic coming into play.
Maybe it's a reason that Clovis Bray and Ishtar Academy didn't like to work together because they were using alternative xenotech. Oh, gee. Who'd have guessed?
I know who guessed. I know the answer.
I know the answer. Maybe the xenotech didn't like each other. Maybe it wasn't anything to do with the people using it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Might have been something like, scraping
use-
into different portals and everything,
Use Vex.
Might have been something like that.
Alien versus Predator. Dear God.
I swear to God, if there's a mission where we go underneath Antarctica, there's a giant pyramid, I'm out. I'm out so fast. Just
I'm gonna say we've seen
I
how
know
this one unfolds.
I know how
We're
this
done.
ends. I'm done. I know exactly where this is going. Do not need a face hugger. I do not want to pass go. No, thank you.
Oh man.
But
Well, I think I'm a little bit tapped on this topic.
yeah, I think
until we get some more.
until we get some more Fry files.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more Stephen Fry all the way. I am so happy.
I'm gonna say I unfortunately have not had enough that I could really add to it at all, but I don't know. Meh.
Well, and I know, Green, I know you had a couple of big shout-outs that you had. Do we want to jump into final thoughts and shout-outs real quick?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So I'll let you lead the charge on that.
Okay, so my shoutouts this week actually go to Pirate Danny, Wilb Sarama, and Dr. Jazzy Bebop, which I love his name, by the way, and the rest of the Ishtar Collective. These guys I put out a call the other day because I was putting show notes together for this and pulling all my information together, and they didn't exactly have everything out on the website yet, but luckily Purple Chimera, who's been on the show quite a few times now, pointed me to go to their forums because Purple works with Ishtar primarily, and she said go look through the forums, see if they've submitted them, and then you can get it's not a finalized copy, but you can get the transcripts. And Pirate Danny, Will, and Jazzy have all done a phenomenal job of getting pretty much everything that we talked about tonight was pulled from the forums for Ishtar Collective. So if you've never been to the forums, go check it out. It's amazing. Like, I love Ishtar Collective as a website as a whole, but the forums, if you can't find something on the site, go to the forums because it's probably there or it's in the process of being there. They've done a great job. And I know that they have a Patreon, and I'd like to just kind of do a slight push to support them if we can. If you dive into lore at all, if you use Ishtar at all, and you have like a little bit that you can give,
even a dollar, like
even a dollar.
They host that entire site is driven entirely from I want to say it's Baxter, Norman, and I know Uni helps with like the data management piece of it, but I'm pretty sure Baxter and Norm are the ones that designed that site from pretty much the ground up. Like, it's a completely they're completely hosting it, running it, debugging, all of that stuff. It's all on them. So
Which
any of the
it's
support,
not Bungie sanctioned.
There's that, but it also means that like if you run a website through like WordPress or Squarespace or whatever, you have a helpline that basically if there's a bug somewhere, you can kind of submit a ticket to them and they'll fix it. I'm pretty sure are self-hosted, so there's no one that they turn to. So if something goes on Ishtar, it's basically Baxter and Norm that are trying to figure out. So I mean, like, and that's coming from my perspective of, kind of a tech help desk type thing. That's a big task. Like, that's a huge task, and they're doing it, just for free. And if
also just
if
the
you've
info
ever,
gathering.
yeah, that's what I was just about to say. If you've ever used Ishtar, understand that that's 100% free site, and it's an immensely useful resource.
Yes, I use it all the damn time.
So do I.
I could be looking for something totally scrupulous to what I might be thinking of, and all of a sudden I find it, and I'm like, oh no, this actually has a lot to do with what I was talking about, and I would have never thought to look here if it was not for having a database to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps a ton.
Commons is their archive, or their
Commons
the
is
forums.
the forum spot.
And the other one I would like to shout out is actually something that Focus Fire Chat is participating in, and I'm scared. Because I have to play on PS4 to make this work. Which, if you know me, I have a character on PS4. She's finally at 343. She has no matching armor. She looks terrible.
This is a big thing for a hunter, okay? The fact that she has no matching armor.
Looks terrible. But she's functional, and I need to find some wood. I have yet to have a Iron Banner match where I drop below 1 KD. Most of mine are 2 or above at this point. So I'm like, okay, either PS4 people, or I'm either in a really easy pool since I'm new, or PS4 people need to step up their game, because for me to wreck right now. Anyway, the thing that's coming up is the
right on both fronts, really. Right on both fronts.
Yeah, I don't play on there very much, so
yeah, I'll be honest on that one. Being a PS4 gamer primarily, it's right on both fronts there.
Oh man, it makes me feel pretty good about this tournament coming up. Speaking of which, we're doing a Destiny Pod Clash, and it's a PvP tournament just for fun of Destiny-related podcasters.
We promise we're not stealing the idea from Bungie.
Yeah, I told. Yeah, they're.
They started something.
They started it up again. The what? I just went blank on what it's called. Man, I'm not.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, where the bounties? The weekly bounties?
Not the.
No,
it's not the bounties.
actually-
It's where they challenge 1-on-1. They did it with DCP.
Yep.
And they're doing it with
I saw that.
Vicarious Vision next,
Yep.
which is going to be hilarious to watch.
Hilarious.
But this is just podcasters. It's fine. Destiny Pod
Right.
Clash.
Right.
No,
I told
it still works.
I told them I wouldn't be able to necessarily maybe hit the broadside of the barn, but I could tell them about the map that they're playing on.
You could tell them about the broadside of the barn. Maybe?
Yeah, I can explain the barn
Okay.
and the significance and the history of it.
Have you played on the new maps? Because they're all new
Completely.
maps that we're playing on.
Oh, are they? I know. Well, I don't have PlayStation, so I got really confused because I jumped into Iron Banner the other day, and in Pacifica, that map is confusing. I have no idea what's going on, where it's going. I'm like, thank God for control waypoints, because I was like, I'm gonna just hang out at B. And if I ever spawn, I'm like, I'm just going to go down this tunnel. Nope, wrong tunnel. I'm going to go to that tunnel. Nope. Okay, yep, here's B. I'm going to stay here.
There's only one new
Maybe
map.
not that tunnel. Maybe not that tunnel.
I started down one tunnel and I ended up back at A. I was really confused. I was like, this is like driving through Waco. Like, where am I going?
Yep.
Ah, God. No, there's like 3 maps that we're playing on. 2 of them, I guess, are older maps. One's Distant Shore, the other one's Burnout, and then the new one, Javelin 4, is the new map that we're playing on. And it's 3 rounds. There's a lot of big name podcasts on here, which kind of scares me, because it's going to be me and Pens and a few other guys from chat who are they promised they would backpack me a little bit.
Well, I mean, and they have the roster up, right? They have it over on Grenades and Horseshoes.
I have it pulled up right now.
You do? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so, like, Crucible Radio is the one that I'm looking at right now going, if I have to play against those guys, I'm just gonna just sit down like I do at the end of a match that's going terribly and or clap every time I see one of them coming towards me, because it's like, oh God. You're just gonna get
Voop. Voop.
Yeah. Grenades and Horseshoes are the ones that are putting it on, and they're doing a phenomenal job. I got to see the t-shirt design for it.
Nice.
That's coming out. It's so cool. It's so cool. But yeah, that's coming up June 9th and 10th. And it's going to start around 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on both days. So I'm excited for it. I'm terrified at the same time. It's going to be hilarious and fun. And I know we're streaming it. I believe that I'm going to be streaming it on the FFC account and just doing a multi-link with everybody so you can link in and watch everyone.
Nice.
So what you're telling me is I need to start practicing more on the PS4 again and get back into my old Crucible fashion that
if you
want to
join me,
on. I mean, I haven't been able to really Crucible all that much for the simple fact that I kind of make content.
I know, which is why I didn't bug you.
Yeah,
the rules say at least one host. If you,
I'm attempting to play more often. Like I'm trying to log in at least per day so I can get my daily thing done for World and everything, to make sure that I'm progressing somewhere. But I know it doesn't happen. It really doesn't.
We should play together.
No, I think it would help. It would definitely help. Blue, get a PS4. Thanks. I know. What time would you actually have to play it? You're worse than all of us.
What about your shoutouts, Beard?
My shoutouts go to my freakish community for always being crazy and always for being more open-minded than I am about crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. Because the ideas that you come up with are frankly ridiculous. And the fact that I can use some of them and actually tie them back into legit lore is also ridiculous. I don't know what that says for us and our brains. I don't know what that says for Bungie, but it works. But that being said, thank you guys for always presenting different ideas, for kind of jumping back with me on Twitter or YouTube comments or anything else. Mm-hmm. It's valued because I am able to actually communicate with you guys, which I'm getting less and less time to do so. So the times that I do is awesome. Secondary shout out goes to the fact that Iron Banner is kicking my butt. Now the biggest thing is just the way that Iron Banner has been playing this week. Bungie has I feel like it's been really good. I've been having a lot of fun with it again. And again, if you're not playing 6v6 Iron Banner, I really would recommend that you get in there to just try it out a little bit. Just try it a a bit.
It's so good.
It is so fun.
I miss Sixes so much.
It got me back in. Someone nearly lost their mind when I mentioned that on Twitter. They're like, wait, you're playing Crucible?
Yeah, I know.
I'm like,
oh
you're
yeah. Enjoying it?
Yeah, I'm
not losing your mind?
I'm just, yeah.
I will put in the addendum, of course, that Graviton Lance and
Vigilance Wing.
Is all over the place right now, but
it is.
Both guns are passable to one point or another on a few different layers. But regardless, I do think that it's a lot of fun.
Well, and I've noticed even with the rounds that I've run, even if they have I haven't run into teams of solid Vigilance or Graviton.
It's mixed,
but it's usually a really good mix, and it's one of those things where it's they are noticeably more powerful, but if you know the map and you can get the drop on them, you can actually still have a fair shot of taking out someone, even if they have.
Crimson's the other one. Crimson's showing up a lot.
I haven't had too many Crimson. I think I've had one Crimson.
Yeah. Crimson for other reasons, especially when starting to use the catalyst and everything like that. But it's obvious that there is a meta right now. The meta has actually been, I would argue, established at this point.
Right.
Because previously we really didn't have a meta that was there. But pulse rifles are strong if you're a pulse rifle user. Hand cannons are strong if you like hand cannons. They still, I think the one weapon that I saw that's a little right now is scout rifles.
Yeah, and they really nerfed Mida and everybody else in the scout rifle category.
Yeah, which arguably they never said they were going to because of the lore tab. But that being said, they really did. I feel like it's different from where it was before, and it's part of the stuff that we've been screaming for here for a little while. So at least I think it's a step in the right direction.
I'm grateful for it because I've talked about this a few times on show. I run Midas sidearm. Like, that's what I ran all the way through D1 once we got sidearms, and most of the D2 so far. Yep. And then since the Go Fast update and this newest update with the Warmind Graviton Hands, I haven't picked up a scout or a sidearm.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually having fun playing with other weapons.
Right. Well, I'm going to say where Mida was like the only quote-unquote feasible weapon to some, we now have this additional leveling that exists that, quite frankly, allows the game to stand on a different position. So I am happy for it. I'm happy for the changes, and like anything, games will make these changes when the meta starts to feel a little stale. So for me, this is feeling right, but I know it's not going to be for everybody. It's certainly not going to please the competitive lot. We'll put it that way, because nothing pleases them anymore.
Well, no. I've seen positive messages coming from that side too. Granted, they're a little saltier than some of the contingencies, but that's the competitive nature in them.
Yes. I got to say, that's them going, I'm so tired of getting killed by this weapon because I have only seen this weapon.
Like Colony, we tried to ban Colony from the PvP turn. I tried to ban Colony from the PvP tournament. Everybody didn't go for it. I'm like, gosh dang it, that gun you don't have to aim. If you don't have to aim, is it a gun?
I'm going to say it's better. It's better now than it was, because they did cut down on that for sure.
I agree. But, it's not nearly as bad. I still hate it. I still hate getting killed by it. Right. I will probably rage on stream if somebody is running Colony. So come and watch that if you want to see me curse. Because it's going to happen.
But yeah, those are largely mine. Right now I don't have a lot of shout-outs because I'm pretty well focused on not sweltering to death, like I said at the top of the show. So my time is like kind of minimal that way, but I have a load of things in the works. Otherwise, I'm excited to kind of get back to you guys with some of it. I am most definitely excited to sit and chat with you guys about most of it too, and to kind of maybe show a stream here and there. Maybe get back into that. Maybe we'll see.
I'll do it with you.
Yeah, I'm going to say it'd be great if we could do it just for like a couple hours, especially on the times that I'm like, I'm just so hot. This is it. My brain's mush. I don't know what my brain even is anymore. But you get what I mean. Anyway, that is it for me.
Awesome.
I will shut up.
Just real quick reminder that the next week's topic is going to be a recap on Halo for the Extra Lore week. And the question there is that we are curious on your thoughts on if Halsey is a good or bad person and why. So, have at it and burn all the things down. Other than that, big shout out to Worthy D for the patronage over on Podbean. We really appreciate that, and that's pretty much all I have myself. We were going to run through a bit of an outro, and then probably we'll stay for a few minutes at least for an after show, as is customary. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. Links to our episode archives can be found at www.focusfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all of our amazing partner podcasts within the Guardian Radio Network over on theguardiansofdestiny.com. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.